All right. Welcome to the show. William Branum, the founder of Naked Warrior Recovery, former Navy SEAL, joins me today. We're talking entrepreneurship. We're talking mindset. We're talking CBD, talking life. And William, welcome to the show, my man. I really appreciate having you. This has been long time in the making.
Yes, sir. Thanks for first of all, thank you for bringing me on the show. I think we connected something like 2 years ago, after you finished the project class 001, and yeah, and you were using the network that you acquired while being uh, under that
100%.
program. I was
100%.
gonna think of some different words to use, but yeah, I think that
No,
that
well,
probably
I mean
works.
that's the truth of it, man. It's one of those things. It was actually a little over 3 years ago that I went through the project, and then
Oh
shortly
wow.
shortly after, I saw you being connected to Bedros, obviously being connected to Ray Cash Care, former Navy
Ray Cash
SEAL,
Care, former Navy SEAL. Yes.
and then I saw you were doing something pretty cool as well. That piqued my interest in an area that I was already consuming, which is CBD. And I've been a big fan of CBD since I started doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu about 7 years ago, using it for my own pain relief, anti inflammatory, um, mental health as
Yep.
well. And I found out you owned a company in that space. So maybe let's just start there, man. What's Naked Warrior Recovery? What's that all about?
So Naked Warrior Recovery, it's primarily a CBD company, but we have some other supplements as well. It really let me back up a little bit and kind of tell you how it all started.
Yeah, let's do that.
So my transition from the military was not an easy one. I think I was in denial. I spent 26 years, 23 of my 26 years in the military, and 23 of those 26 years I was in the SEAL teams. And when I was in the SEAL teams, actually even in the military, before I got to the SEAL teams, I knew what my purpose was. I knew what my mission was. And once I got to the SEAL teams, I knew who my team was. And I had a pretty badass purpose, a pretty badass mission, and a badass team to kind of go along with that. And when I transitioned, I was really in denial about, like, what am I going to do next? I use the analogy where Thanos like snaps his fingers in the movie The Avengers,
Yeah.
and half the world's population goes away. That's the way that I felt the day that I left the military. I mean, I was in such denial about, retiring, air quotes here. I was finishing, like, I was sending emails on my BlackBerry, because that's what we used, was a BlackBerry when I was like secure communications. Um, and to, like, on these all these projects that I was working on, and like the day before I like was out of the Navy, and like I'm like doing work while I'm on like terminal leave. Terminal leave is like you have a certain number of leave days saved up, and I'm on terminal leave, and I'm still working on projects that I was doing, in the SEAL teams, or my last duty station, which I was at the headquarters here in Hawaii. And I went out and found $16 million of other people's money
Was
to solve problems that we had.
was
And
was
go ahead.
was it just not really knowing anything different, anything else? Like what you did in the military was so woven to who you were as a person.
Well, it's like what I wanted, like, from childhood. I always knew I wanted to be part of some sort of like elite military organization. And then I found out about the SEAL teams. I'm like, yes, that's where I want to be. And
Mm.
then I eventually got there, and I didn't want to leave. Really, it
Okay.
was it was it was absolute denial. Like, I don't want to, like, I know I have to leave. I, I knew 3 years out that I was leaving, but I absolutely did not want to leave. There was this little, like, maybe I can get one more year out of the military. And so, but they're like, sorry, bro, you got to go. We got to make room for the, new blood. So it was my time. And so I left and I started a company. I did all right financially, but I considered a complete failure. Not a complete failure, but major failures. Number one, I didn't like there was a lot of grind that went along with it. And I was also struggling with some other baggage, from my time in the military, and some not so awesome relationships that I've been a part of.
Yeah.
And it was dragging me down, and I wasn't being successful like I thought I would be. because I was successful in the SEAL teams. I had failures in the SEAL teams, but I also had a certain level of success. And so it was like a lot of, I got a lot of noise or baggage or whatever. And so I had heard about this molecule called CBD while I was on active duty. I had a top secret clearance. And so I was like, I hear you, but I'm not going to try that because, I'm afraid I don't want to lose my security clearance, and anything
Yeah.
that's, I'm going to use air quotes here, marijuana based. That's a quick way to leave the military. Because, when I was in, CBD wasn't federally legal yet. CBD didn't become federally legal until I think it was December 20th of 2018, and I retired July 31st of 2018. So it still wasn't federally legal, and I was still trying to figure out what's my next purpose, my next mission, my next thing I'm going to do in life. And so fast forward to 2019, I'm in Virginia. I'm having lunch with Ray Kashkar, former Navy SEAL, and you have to say it like that anytime
Former
you say
Navy
his
SEAL,
name.
Ray Keshker.
And I was like, and I told him some of the stuff that I had going on. And I said, I'm going to, after lunch, I'm going to see if I can go find a CBD, a place that sells CBD around here, because maybe the CBD you have in Virginia Beach is better than what we have in Hawaii. I have no idea what I'm saying, doing, or thinking, and except I want to try CBD. And Ray was like, you want CBD? I've got a bunch at the house, because he is, pretty well known on the Instagram, on the internet, and
Oh
people
yeah.
send him free stuff all the time. So he gave me a bottle, and maybe I felt a little better that, maybe I slept a little better that night. Maybe I slept, was a little less pissed off the next morning. I'm not really sure. But what I do know is that when I finished that bottle of CBD, I did a little bit of a assessment. I was like, I don't feel like it did anything, I don't think. But then when I stopped taking it, you know, those things that used to stopped bothering me started bothering me again. The pains in my body that were not as bad started to become bad again. So I kind of used the example of like water boils at 212 degrees. I was probably living my life at 210 degrees. It's that, so how you boil a
Yeah.
frog or how you cook a frog. I was there. I was at that boiling point. But what I didn't notice is that the temperature got a little bit less bad. It was a little less hot. So I went from like 210 to 205 to 200 to 195 to 190, maybe 185. I got out of that red zone, out of that like super boiling zone where like things are going to like any little thing could like set me off, to, having more time to respond to these triggers that were going on. And so I started getting closer to that boiling point again. I tried a different brand of CBD. I had similar results. I'm like, I want to be part of this industry. This is my new mission. This is my new purpose. And so I was actually at, the, what is it? The
The Empire Business Summit.
Empire Business Summit. Yes.
Yeah, I was there.
And I met a girl. So in the Q&A session that Bedros and Craig had, like at the end of the day,
Yeah,
where
that
Craig
ran
Valentine
late.
was
That
was
ran
falling
late at
asleep on
night.
stage. It was awesome. Yeah. And so there was a girl there that she was putting CBD into kinesiology tape, and she was trying to figure out how to market that.
I remember
And
this.
I was like, oh, you're in the CBD industry. I want to talk to you. And I followed her, like it ended. I followed her around till, I was like, hey, you're the CBD girl, right? And she was like, yeah, can you like step back there, weirdo? And I said, I'm interested in CBD and la la la, whatever. And so she was like, so do you want to do A to B, B to B, or B to C? And I was like, I don't know those letters. I want to do C, B, D. And she was like, and really, I wanted her to hire me, so I could help her grow her business and sell stuff and whatever. Like I thought this was like where I needed to be. And she was like, well, why don't you start your own CBD company? And I said, I don't know how to do that. And she said, you are a Navy SEAL. You can figure it out. And so I asked her if I could have my man card back and put that back in my pocket to not give up ever again. And then so I followed up with her, and she explained a lot of stuff about CBD. And then I started researching it. I found that the industry's like dirty. People are out there just to like get rich quick. And so I was like, oh, okay, I want to like create the highest quality CBD on the market. I want to, that's my mission, highest quality CBD. And so, and I remember from that Empire Business Summit, everyone's like, what is your why? Why are you doing this? What's your purpose behind doing this? Like have a bigger purpose than just try to make a bunch of money. Okay, so highest quality, whatever. And then I'm like, then I found out like everybody's, has a premium quality CBD, not everybody, but that was just sort of because I was running in circles of like high performing or high quality products.
Right.
Like what's a higher purpose than just a high quality product? And I looked at myself, I looked at where I came from, and I found that, the statistic that 22 veterans take their lives every single day. My dad is actually one of those 22. And so our mission at Naked Warrior Recovery became, eliminating veteran suicide, 22 to 0. So yeah, so that's a little background about,
Wow.
Naked Warrior Recovery and CBD, and it was a little long-winded, but
No,
that's
no,
kind of
I love
how
it. And
that's
by the
kind of
way,
how I got started in the industry.
yeah, and I could personally attest. I mean, I've and you know this since we started chatting, and since I saw you were doing CBD, I bought a handful of your products. Your gummies, are phenomenal, man. Your
Yeah,
gummies
thank
are,
you.
and then the tinctures too. At you guys have some that are up at, I think it's 2,500 milligrams or 5,000 milligrams in a bottle. Is that right?
2250. I have a
Yeah, it's
2250. Yeah,
2,250. That's what it is. And dude, I absolutely love the tinctures that you guys have as well. So there's next to
awesome.
my nightstand, use them almost daily. So a big fan of that. Let's go back to let's double click into this whole mental health, veteran
Yep.
suicide issue. I did in some prep having you on because I know it's one of the things that you stand for is supporting mental health. I looked at how many active duty and veterans have died by suicide since in the last 20 years. And the number that I got was, and this was from the USO, 30,177, compared to the 7,057 killed in combat over those same 20 years. So you've got multiples of 4 or 5x. And I think, and again, there's probably a couple different places where these statistics are. I don't, as long as we're on the target board, I think that's what matters for this conversation. But like,
Right.
that's a lot of people, man. That's a lot of
Yeah.
human beings. Like in your personal experience, as well as the time that you've spent in this space, how are you making heads or tails of why so many active duty and veterans are taking their own lives?
I think I think a lot of it is a sense of purpose, not having that purpose, not having that mission, not, that transition from military to civilian life. Again, I talk about that as that's the hardest military mission I've ever been on. And so, I'm on the board of a nonprofit that helps veterans with that transition from active duty to civilian life, helping them find jobs, helping them to find purpose. Because and there's other thing where you go from like a world of like discipline and standards to no discipline, no standards, if that's what you want.
Mm.
And so we as humans, we as mammals, we like structure. Even though we don't think we like structure because it's a little bit uncomfortable at times, we like structure. We thrive under structure. And I think when these people leave the military, they lose that structure that is forced upon them. And they're like, I'm just going to, and because I did it myself,
Well,
I was
forced
like, oh, I
upon
can
them,
sleep in. I can whatever. Yeah.
but forced upon them. But I think that there's a certain personality type that seeks out that order and that structure and that
Sure.
in on the way in as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. Or they were, told to go in because
They
you can
needed
go
it,
to the military or you can go to jail. One of the two.
right?
That is also, an option. And I was in the Navy, so I did work with Marines. I worked with Air Force people. I worked with a lot of Army people, but I generally worked with people who were in the high performance arena. But I also spent time in the regular Navy where it's not necessarily high performance, but they thrive on doing a really good job at what their job is. And you can consider that high performance. And so, but again, you leave that arena of sort of high performance and standards and expectation and go into like, you leave and you're like, I don't have to get up early. Oh, maybe I start depending on alcohol to turn down this noise in my head. That was certainly my case.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they lose a sense of purpose and pride, and they're like, I don't know what to live for anymore. So, and I've met so many people inside the military and outside the military, from like professional athletes to entrepreneurs, who they struggle with that transition. Like, what's my life worth anymore? Like, it was worth it. This company that I sold for $4 billion, it's not worth anything now, or it's worth, my time in the military where I had purpose and mission and a team. I don't have any of that anymore. So I need to figure out like it's figuring out your new purpose or your new why is very hard to do. And it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
A lot of times you may like take a job that you don't like and you're like, I hate this job. And you're not thinking like, I can just quit this job and go find another job. Or you're not thinking about like, what do I want to be? Where do I want to be in 5 years or 10 years? I really hate those questions when I'm asked them, but I think they're relevant to make you start thinking. Because if someone said to me, what, like 4 years ago when I got out of the military, that today, that in 5 years, you're going to be selling, you're going to have a business where you sell a supplement. You're going to be a leadership mindset business coach, and you're going to speak on stages around the world. And I would have said, yeah, that's not me. That's not this guy. But that's all I want to do now. I want to sell products. I want to coach people to make them better leaders, make them, their businesses run better. And I want to get on stage and inspire people to just live a better life.
That's kick ass, man. It's cool to hear you cross that bridge and now have that purpose and have that engine that's driving behind you in a very different place, it sounds like, than you were with the story that you shared earlier.
Oh my God. Like so different. Yeah. But it took me a long time to get here. It took a lot of failure. It took a lot of, like that first business that I started that financially somewhat successful, but oh my God, I was absolutely miserable doing it.
Yeah. Well, then, so when we go and look at CBD in particular, what is it that helps to turn the volume down on this stress and anxiety or pain, or like to add value to the individuals who are struggling with it? And is it maybe a catalyst for people to help find their purpose? Is that your hypothesis? Is that the position you're coming from?
The position I'm coming from is it's been scientifically proven, and we still don't know a lot about it. Because it was illegal for such a long time. I mean, it was legal for 2,000 plus years, used as medicine, but then for the last 100 or so years, it's been illegal, and now it's becoming legal again.
Well, and it gets lumped into the whole the THC conversation.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize that they're two different plants.
Right. Well, it's the same plant. It's just how it's raised, and
sure.
I can kind of.
Yeah, will you educate the users just in case?
Yeah, I can nerd out on this stuff for sure.
Let's go.
So on the like kind of the PTSD or the like turn down the noise side of it, it's like we don't know that like actually how that works yet. The chemical things that happen in the brain, but what does happen is CBD every mammal has what's called an endocannabinoid system. So it's this giant neuroreceptor system in the body that's connected to every other system in the body. It's connected to your respiratory system, your central nervous system, your immune system, any system in your endocrine system. And so what happens is sometimes these systems get out of balance or are kind of out of whack, and that pulls, because it's connected to this endocannabinoid system, it pulls everything else out of balance. And what CBD, so the body creates, the human body creates natural endogenous cannabinoids like CBD, like THC, like CBN, like all these other minor cannabinoids that are found in the hemp plant or in the cannabis plant. And so those molecules that the body creates, they feed that endocannabinoid system to help bring it back into homeostasis. But sometimes you either have so much, inflammation, or some system is, wildly out of whack from different illnesses or what have you, everything else just gets out of whack. And what CBD, the way that the molecule is shaped, it's shaped like this key that goes in and it unlocks all these other locks in the endocannabinoid system. So you have two endogenous cannabinoids, anandamide and 2-AG. Anandamide is very closely related actually to THC. It's known as the feel-good molecule. It helps with the upregulation of serotonin, that sort of runner's high that you get. You feel good after you work out or whatever. That's anandamide, helping with helping you feel good.
Gives you that, like, it's not like a head thing, but it does make your body kind of feel like it's floating just a little bit, or it's lighter.
Well, you just feel better. You're like, I'm so happy right now. Serotonin and all those other things. And it's like, it's known as the bliss molecule. And so THC is kind of a similar shape, similar effects at low doses, as like sort of that anandamide runner's high, work out really well, uh, feel good thing. But sometimes we don't create enough. Most of the time, we don't create enough of these endogenous cannabinoids to keep the body, that endocannabinoid system, into homeostasis. And so CBD just happens to be um, the molecule that can go in and it can fill in all those gaps that the body isn't manufacturing itself, and pull everything back into homeostasis. And so when people talk about like whatever CBD cured my cancer or la la la, CBD did none of that. CBD was just it was like I like to call it a super multivitamin for the endocannabinoid system. It like helps bring everything back into homeostasis. It's kind of like you take vitamin C, or you breathe oxygen. You can't see that. You can't, you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
you only know it, like you don't know if vitamin C is actually doing anything for you.
well,
Maybe you don't get sick.
you're touching on something it's just driven me crazy about the CBD space a little bit. And we talked about this before we went on air for a moment, which was a lot of the claims that are made in the world of CBD, of that what they can cure or what they like for sure do. And people, unfortunately, some folks that I've interacted with do not use terminology that's not definite. You know what I mean? Like, it's so
Right.
hard to hear that. And so many of these substances aren't, like, again, to your point, it was banned for so many years. So we don't have this like really profound body of knowledge. Some of the studies that are done are intellectually lazy around it.
Sure.
And it's really hard to
Yep.
get some funding for like the really good, XYZ multi-year long-term clinical control trials, those types of things. But there are great studies that are out there.
Right.
It's just there's a subculture of people that are still pushing back against the government for the undue process of banning something that should have been there. And so like the claims are like the fish stories that just get bigger and bigger and bigger
Yes.
about like how this goes. And so how do you approach that with your brand? How do you do it so that you're providing a very clear interpretation of what value CBD could provide for you? How do you market it?
Well, first of all, I make no medical claims. Uh, I will sometimes talk about myself and what CBD did for me. And then, other people who have used the product, they write testimonials, or they don't always write testimonials on the website, but they certainly
Yeah.
write them to me. And what's funny is I was on a podcast, I don't even know how long ago, 8 months ago, and this guy wrote me like, I'm telling you, it's like it was like 32 swipes of my phone as I was reading this long email about military history and his time and other stuff and things like that. And could I somehow help the United Kingdom, change their policy on CBD so that, veterans in the kind of UK military could have access to it, and all this other stuff. And I was like, wow, what? I don't even know what I said on that podcast.
Yeah.
I just know what it did for me, and then what other people have told me that it has done for them.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful, man. What's been the funnest part of getting this business going? And then what's along the way, like what was the biggest surprise or biggest disappointment in your journey thus far?
Let's see. Let's start with the failures, the disappointments. I
Like a former
I
Navy SEAL.
I I don't know anything about marketing, or didn't know anything about marketing. And we'll just say, use the Empire Business Summit for example. People are like, yeah, you need to like run ads on Facebook ads and this and that and whatever and some other stuff. And I didn't even have a Facebook account.
Yeah,
and so I started this company.
Top of the funnel, this into the funnel,
right.
funnel.
Right. So I didn't even have a Facebook account. And then, okay, so I started the company. I'm like, okay, run some ads. And so I started running ads, and then like I would like post something, and then I would boost it. And then they took my credit card number and all that other good stuff. And then Facebook deleted my account and said, this account no longer exists, whatever, for whatever reason. And I was like, what happened? Maybe this happens all the time. I don't know. But then I started seeing like my credit card was still being charged for ads that Facebook was running, even though my account was deleted. So I started another account, or I tried to restart that one, and it was like three accounts later, three Facebook accounts and one Instagram account later, I finally realized that Facebook does not like CBD. They do not like any, like it's a banned substance. It's whatever. They're like lumped it in with kiddie porn or something like that. And I was like, what the hell is this? So I stopped running ads, and I was like, how do I find, I went on this journey to like, how do I market this to people and not get banned? And so I, reached out to, business coaches, Bedros Keuilian, Sharon Srivatsa are two of my business coaches.
Oh, wow.
And so we, because of the failures that I experienced, and like I had to think unconventionally in the whole marketing space. I don't even have conventional marketing under my belt. Now I'm forced to think unconventionally. So, but it's kind of like in the SEAL teams. I don't know conventional tactics of the military. I only know the unconventional tactics of the SEAL teams. So, and then we would become, our unconventional tactics were conventional to us. And then we would, make them even more unconventional along the way. So, so I had to figure out like, how do I market? How do I, people are like, are you going to be the face of the brand? I'm like, sure. I don't know what that means even. So I started getting on podcasts, and, I've been on over 450 podcasts since I started the company. Well, actually it was Bedros was like, all right, you need to get on, like, you need to be unrealistic and get on, like, make a list of the top 20 biggest podcasts in the world for kind of health and fitness and things like that.
Yeah.
And then get on those. And I was like, okay. And then of course his podcast was like the first one I wanted to be on. So he was like, do you want to be on my podcast? And I was like, absolutely. So the next day we went and did a podcast, and it was interesting. Like I had done a handful before, but all the questions were pretty canned. Like I knew the question before they asked I knew the answer before they asked the question. And then we roll into the studio there, and they just asked me something like out of left field that I was not prepared for. I thought we were just going to kind of talk about stuff that we talked about, the day before and all this other stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm like live studio audience. Like, don't mess up your answer. Like,
well, he's got a beautiful studio too, man.
Right. Like, yeah. Not thinking that like they'll edit. Yeah. And so I was like, don't mess this up, like focus and like get the right answers out. And I did all right on that podcast. I, went back and looked at it. I was like, oh, that was an okay answer. I maybe could have answered it better, but for sure it was like uncomfortable. Like, oh, and so now I like have gone out and sought out podcasts where people are going to ask me, hard questions. And through the process of doing podcasts, being asked hard questions, all the coaching that I've received, one of the other ways that I market is I get on stage. And when I was coaching with Sharon, he said, everyone in this group should have a signature presentation. And, the signature presentation is like, think of it as your TED Talk. Like it's something that you can present in 10 minutes or 90 minutes. You can go anywhere in between. And so it's something that you're an expert in, something that you like share with people, and people would be interested no matter what the audience. And so I'm like, okay. So I had this kind of saying, get naked. And so what I did is I took naked and I turned it into an acronym. And that is the presentation that I actually gave it at a coaching event with Bedros back in January. And so to kind of break it down, this is my 5 secrets to think like a Navy SEAL. And so it goes like this. So naked, the N stands for never quit. The A is accept failure. The K is to kill mediocrity. The E is expose your fears, and D is do the work. I know that's like kind of a mouthful, but I also have a landing page. It's 5sealsecrets.com, the number 5 SEAL, like Navy SEAL, 5sealsecrets.com. 5 secrets to think like a Navy SEAL. If you go there, you put your name and your email in there. I send you a copy basically of my presentation with a lot of the script that I give from stage, and you can use that and apply that to your daily routine. And so that's another way that I found, market, like in sort of the marketing world. So this was part of the things that I did not expect. I made this, presentation really just because my coach told me to. And then now I'm looking for stages to put it on, but it's also another avenue to market to people. Like I can run ads to that and then get people in my, in my email funnel so that I can, market coaching to them. I can market courses to them, like different ways to think like a Navy SEAL tactical
Yeah.
experience applied to business, and things like that. So, you know,
I love it, man. So,
the terrible thing was like that I failed at marketing, but the good thing was I had to figure out unconventional ways to market to people.
oh, hell yeah, man. That's one of the most challenging things for me from a business standpoint. And I always joke with folks because this podcast is purely off the side of my desk, and it is an interest piece. As in, I do high performance mindset and executive coaching. I don't sell it on this podcast. I never even tell people where to go find it. I own a management consulting firm. I never talk about that. I mean, I think I did on the last episode just for a second, but most people go when they meet me, they're like, "Is that podcast like the full time thing that you do? Like, is that is that how you make your money?" And I'm like, "Well, not exactly. I mean, it does make some money, but it's not paying all my bills around the house." And I think it's an important distinction is I rely on folks like
Right.
you and those 400 people that you've been on their podcast, 400 plus, rely on folks like you to come in and spread your message, man. And it
Right.
sounds like you're finding different avenues to bring folks in, like you said, from that unexpected win in marketing as well. So that's really cool.
Or unexpected failure.
Unexpected failure. Hey, can I always have to ask this because
Send it.
this is such a layman kind of question that you probably filled it 100 times. Well, let's see if I can ask it in a different way. How like looking back, um, and thinking about your time in buds and thinking about your time training and then thinking about your time on deployment and getting ready for missions and all the things that you did in 20 plus year career in the Navy SEALs, like how do you think about it now? Like, how do you think about like what you went through in buds? And then they've recently talked about, and you might have an opinion on this, is like, somebody got shamed online for like the way folks were treated and these like special ops military trainings. You might have I'd love your perspective on that. I'd love your own personal perspective of what it was like going through the program and then being being a fucking Navy SEAL.
Sure. So I guess I'll address the recent media
Yeah.
attention to the training. So first of all, the training is meant to be hard. It's not even training. It's a selection process. Like buds is not, they don't teach you how to be a Navy SEAL. They teach you, they look to see what's inside of your soul to see if you have what it takes to keep going, because it didn't matter how much it sucked during training or during SEAL training, during that selection process. I always knew, like, it didn't matter how miserable it was. I always knew that this is going to end, whether we're laying there in the ocean, like jackhammering together, or carrying that boat on our head, or doing log PT or whatever it was. I always knew that this is going to end. When I was in actual combat, or even training up for combat at the SEAL team, there's no training timeout. There's no like, hey, can we start over? You just keep going.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it be? It was just like, oh, hey,
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I lost to like whatever. We're doing a dive,
yeah,
and we're like getting in this little mini submarine that we have or whatever, and a fin falls off of my foot and sinks to the bottom of the whatever place where we were at. So we went down and found it. Okay, put it back on. I'm kicking along, getting in the submarine, and I lost the other one. And I'm like, mother. Well, guess what? There's no extra fins around, so you're gonna do this mission on one fin. And but that was just the way. So it was like twice as hard for me, and whatever else went on. Or in combat where we're going out for like a couple of hours and we're still out there like 3 weeks later figuring stuff out, asking for resupplies and all this other stuff. So I always knew in training that this is going to end. Yeah, this sucks. No big deal. This is what I signed up for. But in real world, there's no like, oh, can we start over? It's like, you're here and shit's just going to be the way shit is.
So your perspective is the people designing the courses have the experience or the perspective that you just described, and they should be given the autonomy then to set up the training that creates the best available candidate.
Yeah, so in buds, I mean, it's under a microscope all the time. Men have died in training, and we just had a kid die not that long ago, like a couple of months ago. And I think his mom is in kind of up in arms about, I mean, she is, I've seen her interviewed on a couple different platforms, um, about her son dying. And, there's an investigation open right now that students are using like performance enhancing drugs, and it's accepted, and everyone is on steroids, and everyone is on all this other stuff. And like, none of that stuff was around when I was like, it certainly happens in pockets, but those are people are making their own individual choices on what they're using, what they're putting in their body, what they're using to like enhance their performance or not. When I was going through, there was this thing called Ultimate Orange, and that like jacked your heart rate, and all the instructors used it. It was just a pre-workout. And we had kids go down, they were using it, and they're like severely dehydrated and whatever. But that happens because they're trying to get through this hard block of training. And I think the most recent scrutinized criticism of the training has been, these students were out on San Clemente Island. It's the last basically 4 weeks of buds, and they were out in the open, which is a good place to be. And the instructors were coming along with CS gas, like tear gas, and exposing them to this CS gas. It's very uncomfortable. It burns your eyes. It makes your snot run out of your face. You can't really breathe that well. It sucks.
You've got fond memories. Fond memories.
It sucks. But and like they had to sing happy birthday. Well, I guess I don't know who. It wasn't a student that took the video. It was some part of the staff that took the video, and somehow that ended up on the internet. And now there's an investigation. Were the instructors too close? Were they? Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
If they were too close or how hard it was or anything else. When you go to like, this is to see if you have what it takes to be in the SEAL teams, to go into harm's way and to do things that most people don't want to do. It's scary out there. When people start shooting at you or stuff starts blowing up, it gets real fast. When people start dying around you, it gets real fast. I don't want the guy coming in behind me to be less hard than I was going into harm's way. I want to know that I can trust you, that you're not going to quit on me, that you're like, even if we're like sitting in a room full of CS gas for an hour, I don't care. Like, we are going to get out of this, and we're going to fight our way home. So we don't want soft men coming into SEAL training. The end. Well, I mean, as someone who's like been there, and I'm not there anymore, if I were still there, I would have exactly the same, probably even more passionately. Like, I don't want weaker men coming into the organization. Like, this is what the nation depends on.
Oh, I love it. And we already established in the opening that, a career in special operations, military, or high performing operator, that's what you always wanted to do. When you look back on that time now, did you accomplish all the things that you wanted to do in that time? Did you have the experience that you set out to get as a young man?
We have the ability to always go further than we think we can.
Yeah.
And I pushed and I went further than I ever thought I would, but I still have regrets that I wish I'd have done more. I wish I would have gone farther. So there's this team development group. I still have a top secret clearance. I still have things that I can't say. Sure. But you've seen them on the news. You've seen them on TV shows. You've seen, it's a number somewhere probably between 5 and 7 that maybe or may or may not be a team out there.
Yeah.
I wish I would have gone over to that team.
Oh, got it.
And the reason I didn't is because the woman I was married to at the time, no longer married to her, said, if you do that, then we have to reevaluate our relationship. She'd been very manipulative and whatever, and still is to this day. But that is the regret that I have. I mean, potentially, probably, maybe I wouldn't be standing here now. I would be dead.
Okay.
Lots of my friends, lots of my, guys that I helped, bring into this, into the SEAL teams, and like, they worked for me for a long time, and they went over there. Many of them, like, I've got a lot of dead guys in my phone. not going to delete their number or their name.
Yeah.
Like they're there. It's a memory. Um, but that is the only real true regret I think that I have, and I don't like living with regrets. But that's the only like real one I have. But it is what it is, and so I just have to live my life and be the highest performer I can be in everything else I do in my life.
Do you stay pretty well connected with folks that you served with on the SEAL teams?
Only a handful here and
Okay.
there.
Yeah. Is that typical then for folks, or is it just kind of everybody just gets back to their life or those types of things? There's not like regular meetups and things. I don't know. I'm just curious. It popped into my head.
Well, they do have a reunion, like a SEAL reunion on the East Coast and on the West Coast. I live in Hawaii, so I don't attend any of those. I
Yeah.
did kind of while I was in, but the guys that I really keep connected with, actually, I've gone back and connected with other people since I've gotten out, and and some people want to have that connection, and some people don't, and that's fine. Ray was one of the first guys that I connected with when I got out because people were like, okay, social media and this and that, you need to have a name out there on the internet. And I was like, I didn't exist on the internet at all.
Yeah.
And so how do you build that? And because, there's this nature, this thing that they talk about in special operations, do not advertise the nature of your work. So I didn't tell anyone what I did. I didn't tell anyone like who I was. I didn't anything. And then when I got out, I was like, oh, I need to have social media. I need to like have a presence. I need to like tell people who I am and what I did, and to make me more desirable, either to be hired for one thing or another. And so Ray was one of the. I was like, who do I know that is probably on social media?
That's right.
Ray Care.
Right.
So
Fairman,
so I
Fairman every
so
so.
but I didn't even have social. Like I just like created an Instagram,
Yeah.
account, and then was like,
But
who do I know? And then eventually connected with other people.
the last 10 years, specifically, with so many podcasts out there, so many people who are interested, like myself, reaching out to individuals like yourself, somebody with a background in discipline and elite military performance, who has now become this badass entrepreneur, running this company, coaching others, speaking on different stages, adding value across the world. Like, that's truly interesting to me. And there's a lot of people like me who want to have these conversations. It has put a limelight on certain former military kind of members. Things that come to mind, I think, Jocko, obviously, you got Andy Stump with Cleared Hot. Well, you got Green Berets like Tim Kennedy, and all these former high. I don't know how to high performance military. Give me a word for what that bucket is, because
You keep going, and I'll see if I can come up with something.
it's of interest. Even, I just saw Rob O'Neill just launched his new podcast
Yep.
as well. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to be really interested to hear Rob's takes on. For those who are listening who don't know Rob, he did the kill shots on Osama bin Laden, right?
Yep. Yep.
A part of that mission,
Yep.
and some other things from his career as well. So it's all interesting, but I've heard from folks. I've spent some time in San Diego. I was in like random bark conversations with some military folks there. There's folks in the military that have kind of a sour perception of folks who are in the limelight, that are in the limelight because, and maybe not the right words here, because of some of the things that they did in the military, or that they were using that like name. What's your perspective on this?
So Rob, let's just talk about Rob real quick.
Yeah.
A great podcast called the Operators Podcast. I potentially will be on his podcast
That's awesome.
in the near future ish. So Rob and I, we went to Buds together. We were in the same Buds class. Then we went to follow-on training, and then we were also in sniper school together. So he reached out to me one day and was like, "Hey man, let's do an episode on sniper school. Like, people need to hear this stuff." I'm like, okay, let's do it. So Rob is a great example of lots of people hate Rob.
Yeah.
Because he left the SEAL teams and he went out and became an entrepreneur, speaking and the other things that he does.
And he hangs out in golfs with Kid Rock and some other shit too. Like, it just looks like he's living a pretty cool existence, right?
Yeah. He's doing all right. He's not, but like I said earlier, after the book No Easy Day came out that Rob did not write. So a guy that came in behind Rob and shot bin Laden like while he was laying on the ground wrote the book. After that, they didn't. The guy did not say, "Hey, U.S. SOCOM," or "Hey, military, I'm going to write this book," and whatever, under a pen name and all this other good stuff. So really, from that and other things, the Special Operations Command came out and said, "You will not advertise the nature of your work. You will disassociate yourself with anyone who's using their, credentials to advance whatever." While I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was like, yeah, don't do that. Don't talk about whatever. Don't. Now that I'm out, I have a very different perspective of it. And Bedros helped me work through some of that as well. But, someone mentioned once upon a time, no one tells a professional athlete or professional entrepreneur or anyone else not to use what they did in their previous career to not try and elevate where they are now as they start over and do whatever they're doing. Why do I need to do that as a former SEAL? Is it really operational security? Is Al Qaeda going to come find me? And if, for whatever reason they do, and I have to have that altercation, then I will. Yeah. But there's no reason that anyone who has served their country should have to hide the fact that they did that. And if they did like some really cool stuff, they shouldn't have to hide that while trying to create their next career. Because Uncle Sam's not paying my bills anymore. Yeah. I got to pay my own bills. And if I can use what I did in the SEAL teams to do it, like, there are things that I can't talk about, but there's a whole lot that I can. And I have so many lessons learned to share with people that, I went hunting recently down in Texas, and I don't know how much you know about camouflage, but this was a guy that he was top 5 in the mossy oak. Was one of the first like realistic camouflage patterns that ever came out. And this guy, he like figured out all the like licensing and all this other stuff, and he does very, very well. And so he has a lease on a land down in Texas at the Kennedy Ranch or King Ranch, with some like cool, weird critters down there that taste really good. Yeah. But he was saying like his dad took him like through a cemetery one time, and he was like talking about like the lessons learned that his grandfather shared with his dad, and his dad is now sharing with the son. And like, he's like, if you go through life and you learn all of these things, and you have all of these perspectives, and you have all this knowledge, you can't take that with you. You need to leave every single ounce of it here on the planet so other people can benefit from it. And so once I like wrapped my head around that, I'm like, I have some, like, I used to think I had nothing to share. Like, what do people want to listen? People actually want to listen to what I have to say, and they benefit from what I share with them. And so why would I let someone else's opinion stifle what I'm sharing with other people, especially if it makes your life better in some small way?
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely couldn't agree more. And I think that there's, I don't necessarily think it comes from a place of like jealousy necessarily, maybe with people who are active duty, but maybe they just share that same perspective that you had once upon a time, and they're not in a position to have to choose, right? They're not they're not in a position where like making that choice, putting yourself out there, sharing those lessons. And it has probably, I imagine, helped you make heads or tails of your experience in the military as well. So it's probably healing and in a lot of ways too, just talking about it and finding gold panning. It's kind of what I call it. You're finding those nuggets. You're like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize that changed my whole perspective on this.
Yeah. I mean, now when I speak or coach or whatever, I try to take what I learned in the military, and I use some military lingo or whatever, like mission planning, like a mission planning process. And I just gave a class a few weeks ago. Like, I basically took the military mission planning process and shared that with a bunch of entrepreneurs. Like, this is how I'm planning Q1. Like, plan Q1 like it's a military operation. Yeah. And if you do that, you have goals, you have expectations, you have, KPIs that you're trying to meet. And then you do each one of these little things that you need to do for Q1. And then you execute it, you do an after action review, and then you repeat the cycle, like what went right, what went wrong. And then you do it again. These are a lot of things that we kind of sort of do naturally, but we leave pieces of it out. And so one of the things that like people have no idea what I'm talking about until I explain it a little more is I say, do a dirt dive. A dirt dive is basically an extension of the brief, but it's where everyone comes together and does like a rehearsal, like how we're going to actually execute the mission. But we go through the transition points, the points of failure, the places where the mission can go sideways very quickly. And we practice how we communicate on the radio. We practice things as simple as like making sure that we have everyone in the vehicle, making sure we know where we're going to stand when we get out of the vehicle and go into a building. We practice how we're going to get a head count when we leave the building and then get back to these are like the transition points of the operation. These are the transition points of your business. These are the transition points of your life. So if you can practice these, shoot holes in them, this is your opportunity to figure out the actual contingencies. So what if? And then once you actually go in and execute that mission or whatever it is with your organization, you have already practiced it. And then the things that go wrong aren't a surprise. Then you're able to address them a little more quickly. And then when you do it again, you have a better understanding of how to avoid those whatever complications or those potential failure points.
Beautiful.
But it's repetition, but it's planning.
I love it, man. Hey, I want to be respectful of your time. I know we were scheduled to go for an hour, and man, it flies.
I can't eat. Like I thought it's been like 20 minutes.
I feel like it has too, but I look down here and I'm like, oh man, I got to cut some bait with this because I know you got a busy day, and I certainly do as well. Hey, let's do this. Where is the best place to find you on the old intranets? What do you have coming up that you want to share with folks? And then if I missed anything along the way that you wanted to share with my audience and the listeners, please feel free.
I think I'll start with 5 SEAL Secrets. If you want to talk to me about anything, go to 5sealsecrets.com, put your name and email in there. And if you have hold on, my phone is ringing right now.
It's probably telling you, hey, Jake needs to wrap this shit up.
It's like blaring in my ears. That is the problem with Apple devices. Even though they connect to everything, it's still like, oh my God, I forgot to put it in
I know it, man. It happens to me all the time with
like, so 5sealsecrets.com. For CBD, it's nw-recovery.com. And you know what? Let's give your audience a discount code for 20%, and we'll just do Jake.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you for that.
And that will be 20% off for any of your folks. Let's see, I just finished a ton of travel, so I'm glad to be not traveling for a little while, at least in the near future for the next few weeks. Let's see, what else? On Instagram, william.r.branum. You can find me. I think that's it. I got Facebook and all that other stuff, but yeah, any one of those places you can make comms with me if you want to connect.
Well, William, again, 2 years in the making since I started the podcast, and you had several months under your belt with the CBD company, and to see where you are now, and to see how much it's grown and how much you've grown in the process as well is awesome. And so thank you for carving out some time, and best to you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.